So today we're going to talk about the distance formula as well as equations of circles. So first, the distance formula should be a review. The distance formula talks about how much distance is between 2 points on the coordinate plane. We also use it to measure the length on coordinate plane. So the distance formula, we have big square root. We have x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And this is all under this big square root. Now this is given 2 points x and y. Alright, so let's do some examples to refresh our memories on the distance formula. Example 1 says, find the distance between the 2 points. So I'm going to rewrite the distance formula. So I have big square root x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So I sometimes goof up whenever I plug things in. I plug them into the wrong spots. So I always go to my points and I label them. Now remember, each point is an x and a y. And I'm going to label this one as my first point and this one as my second point. So now that I've got them labeled, I'm going to plug them into the formula. Now, for this, we need to definitely practice some safe parentheses because we've got some minus signs going on. We could get thrown off a little bit. So we have big square root. So we're going to plug in x2, and x2 is 1, minus x1, which is negative 4. So here's where we got to be careful. So we've got the minus sign from our formula, but we're subtracting a negative 4. See what I mean by practicing safe parentheses? Plus, and then y2 is negative 3. We don't necessarily have to put that in parentheses because there's not a sign in front of it. Minus y1, which is 9. Okay. So let's clean it up a little bit. First, we're going to figure out what these are. So we have big square root of, and 1 minus a negative 4 is 1 plus 4, so we get 5 squared. Then plus, and then negative 3 minus 9 is negative 12 squared. We're going to square both of these numbers. Now make sure if you put this in your calculator, we've got 25. Make sure that when you plug the negative 12 squared in your calculator that you put negative 12 in parentheses. If not, it's going to give you the wrong answer. You should get 144. Positive, not negative. So when we add those, we get 169. And in your calculator, if you take the square root of 169, you get 13. And our distance is 13 units. Okay, so let's look at B. Now, I'm not going to rewrite the formula because we already have it on this slide, but I am going to label my points, x and y, x and y. This is my first point, and this is my second point. So I'm going to plug it into my formula. So we have big square root of x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is negative 3. So here, since we have a negative here, we got to use parentheses. So we got the minus from the formula, and then the negative of our 3. So plus, then y2, which is 4, minus y1, which is 6. And we're going to square that. So, first thing we got to do is take care of inside of these parentheses. Big square root. 4 minus a negative 3, that's 4 plus 3. So we have 7 squared plus, and then 4 minus 6 is negative 2 squared. So, 7 squared is 49. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. Make sure you use parentheses in your calculator. So we get the square root of 53. Now, that's not going to be a very pretty number, so put that in your calculator, and you get approximately 7.28. And we have 7.28 units. All right, now let's talk about equations of circles. Now, just like we have standard form of linear functions, we also have standard form of the equation of a circle. The standard form is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. Now let's talk about what we can figure out from this formula. Now, to get the center of the circle, we're going to use the point HK. So notice, just like when we had the vertex form, when we were pulling out the vertex, see, we'll have to change the sign here and also change the sign there. Now the radius is whatever the square root of r squared is. So we just have r here for a radius. Now don't forget the radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the edge of the circle. So we're going to use that formula. Now, I've got a little note here. It says to get equations of circles in their standard form, we're going to have to use completing the square. That's why it's with this unit. We're doing more with completing the square. So let's do some examples where we're going to put them in standard form, if they're not already, and then we're going to graph them. Okay, so example 2. Find the center and radius of the circle, then graph it. So the center is really easy to see here. We have, actually this one's in standard form. So for the center, this number right here gives us our h, and this right here gives us our k. So this is h, and this is k. So the center is HK, but don't forget, we're going to change the sign. So this is a positive 1, so when we pull it out, we're going to make this a negative 1. The K is a negative 3, so when we pull it out, we're going to make it a positive 3. So that's our center. Now our radius is the square root of, and what we have equal to over here, which is 9. So you have the square root of 9. So the square root of 9 is 3. So these are pretty easy to sketch. So the first thing you want to do is plot the center. So we have negative 1, 3. That's our center. Then we know that our radius is 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to count out 3 units to the right of the center, 3 units to above the center, 3 units to the left of the center, and 3 units down from the center. And we're going to connect those. So that's going to be our edge of our circle. Now, nobody can draw a perfect circle, so these are really just sketches. So from the center, we're going to count out 3 units, and we have a point here. From the center, we're going to count up 3 units, and we have a point here. We're going to count left 3 units, and we have a point. And then we count down 3 units, and we have a point. So here's our circle. Doesn't have to be the most beautiful thing in the world, but here we go. So that one was fairly easy because it was already in vertex form. So let's look at another example. Okay, let's look at B. Actually, this is already in vertex form. The only thing that's really different is we don't have x plus or minus something in parentheses. Now, if you see this, this is the same thing as saying x plus 0 squared plus y plus 3 squared is equal to 25. Now, we don't write that because we don't normally write plus 0 or minus 0 on anything. But this is going to help you see what your center is. Now your center is h comma k. So h, we have positive 0, but 0 doesn't have a sign. So we're going to pull that out, and we have 0 for our x. And k, we have a positive 3. So when we pull that out, we have negative 3. So there's our center. And then the radius, all we have to do is take the square root of the constant over here, which is 25. So the square root of 25, we get positive 5. So let's sketch this one. We're going to plot the center first. So we have 0, negative, 0, negative 3. Then we know that our radius is 5, so we're going to count 5 to the right of the center, 5 up from the center, 5 to the left of the center, and 5 down from the center. So 1, 2, 3, 5. That's to the right of the center. Count up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's up above the center. To the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we're going to sketch. So the bigger the circle is, actually the kind of harder it is to sketch it. And there we have it. Okay, so moving on to C. This is where we start running into some things that kind of look a little foreign. We're going to use completing the square to get this into standard form. So this obviously isn't in standard form. We've got our x's and our y's kind of mixed up. So before we start, we're going to take whatever constant is over here with our variables, and we're going to put it to the other side. So to get this minus 5 to the other side, we're going to add it. Now, as I add this, I'm also going to rearrange some things on the left-hand side. I'm going to put my x's together. So what's going to go with x squared is the minus 4x. I'm going to put my y's together. And what's going to go with the y squared is plus 8y. But now we have it equal to 5 because 0 plus 5 gives us 5. Okay, now we're ready to put it in standard form. Now we're going to group together our x's and our y's. So we're going to complete the square with both of these. So I have x squared minus 4x plus something, then plus y squared plus 8y plus something. And then don't forget, oh, kind of running out of room here. Whatever you add to one side, you have to add it to the other. So we have 5 plus the first blank plus the second blank. So since we're adding it to both sides, we're being completely legal here. Okay. So next thing we need to do is figure out what goes in our blanks. Don't forget we take our b, which in the first case is negative 4. You divide it by 2, and you get negative 2. And then when you square negative 2, you get 4. So not only are you adding the 4 here, you have to add the 4 to the other side. Now let's complete the square with the y's. So we take that b, which is 8, divide that by 2, and you get 4. Then when you square 4, you get 16. So we're adding 16 here and 16 here. Okay, so we're being completely fair here. If we added it to the left-hand side, we added it to the right-hand side. And same thing with our 16s. So we're good to go. So now, we just have to factor these guys. So you guys should probably be pretty good at doing this now. This is going to be x minus 2 squared plus, and then for this one, we have y plus 4 squared and then all we have to do is just add what's on the right hand side. We have 5 plus 4 plus 16 and we get 25. Now we have it in standard form. So the next thing we got to do is do like we've been doing. We're going to pull out the center and we're going to pull out the radius and we're going to sketch it. So the center for this one, here's our H, here's our K. We're going to change the sign of the 2, so we get positive 2, and change the sign of the K, so we get negative 4. So our center is at 2, negative 4. And then our radius is the square root of 25, which is 5. So let's sketch it. We're going to put our center at 2, negative 4. And then from here we got to count out a radius of 5. So we're going to go 5 to the right, 5 above it, 5 to the left of it, and then 5 down. And then we're going to sketch our circle. A little lopsided, but it works. Okay, so here's our last example of the day. Now, if you notice this time, we've got some x's, but there's not a plain y term over here. Now, like before, we've got this constant term, so we have to move it to the other side. So, to get it to the other side, we're going to add 7 to both sides. So, I'm going to rearrange the left-hand side as I write. We have x squared, and with it, I'm going to write plus 6x. Then we have our y's, and the only thing we have for y's is y squared, and that's equal to a positive 7. Now, in this case, all we're going to have to do is do completing the square with the x's. Now, the y's, if you remember beforehand, I think it's 2 examples ago, we had the one where we had a 0. So our y value for this one, for the center, is actually going to be 0. So let's go ahead and complete the square with the x's. So we're going to have x squared plus 6x plus something. Then we just have plus y squared is equal to 7 plus, and then we've got to add it to both sides, whatever we're going to put in the parentheses. So now, let's figure out what we're adding. So we take our b, which is 6, divide it by 2, and we get 3. We square 3, and we get 9. So we're going to put a 9 here, as well as a 9 here. So when we factor this, we get x plus 3 squared plus our y squared, and then when we add, we get 16. Now, this is in standard form. We can pull out our center and our radius. So the center for this one, here's our h. Our k is actually going to be 0, because remember, we don't write plus 0. So we take the opposite sign. So we have negative 3, and then we have a 0 for the k. And for the radius, we're going to take the square root of 16, which is 4. So just like before, we're going to plot negative 3, 0 as our center. And this time our radius is 4. So we're going to go 4 right, 4 up, 4 left, and 4 down, and make points. So 4 to the right, 4 up, 4 left, and 4 down. And then all we have left to do is sketch our circle. And there we go.